Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves to our listeners and viewers at home. First, we're going to start with the outlaw author himself, Mr. Jesse James Fain.
Hey, everybody. I am Jesse James Fain, sometimes known as the outlaw author. I write science fiction, fantasy, urban fantasy, mill sci-fi, pretty much anything I can squeeze in a fist fight, a sword fight, or a gunfight into. I spent a lot of time in MMA. I spent a lot of time at the gun range. Got a little bit of real-life practice doing a little bit of security work. And so I try and bring a little bit of the real life fight into my writing. And that's me.
What kind of security work did you do?
I did a little bit of bouncing in college. It was not really much of an official thing. It was that, hey, I need somebody to be here and make sure that if anybody gets too drunk or stupid, you throw them out. And I could go on for a long time about some of the events that occurred during that. But that'll be another podcast. So
yeah, I did security work when I was in college for Whackin' Hut as a rent-a-cop. And first off, that was some poor gent's last name, and he was in the military, so you can imagine with that as his last name, dude took some crap. Because poor guy. But yeah, it was a high-rise building that had a bank on the first floor. So we dealt with the crackheads from outside the big city and the drunk executives from inside the building coming down at all hours of the night. Because, you know, you didn't want your wife to know about your mistress. So, of course, you use your office. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's safe. It'll totally work out.
I'm drunk inside the bar. If I am drunk inside the bar and you throw me into public, we are going to fight.
I don't want to be drunk in public.
I was not drunk in public. I was drunk inside a bar.
If this had been the 80s or 90s, they wouldn't have been drunk. They would have been on the nose candy. But now executives have class, and they drink booze like the rest of us. All right, next we have Mr. M.D. Boncher.
Hey, how you doing, guys? I, too, served as in security for 4 years, doing industrial security, and I did a little bouncing on the side. So yes, I thugged for hire too, and yeah, a lot of my time spent was making sure trespassers didn't come into an abandoned iron foundry or paper mills. So yeah, that's basically an all-year haunted house for you. So always fun. No PTSD involved with all sorts of weirdness. Although the working security in an operational iron foundry had its own interesting side. Nothing like some of those events to curl your ear hairs. I am an author of 2 different series, the Yukinawazi Saga, which is dark epic fantasy, and Tales from the Dream Nebula, which is high-flying pulp punk, a mashup of the 1920s pulps with the 2020 punks. And I've been lately working mostly on cranking out short stories of various types, including some additional side stories from the Dream Nebula for different anthologies as of late. And this month, oh boy, in the next 2 months, I got to have 3 of them sent and done and sent. So it's been busy.
So the iron foundries were the site of a couple of body disposals in some made-for-TV crime movies back in the day, because you just throw them in the molten metal and it destroys evidence, in theory.
Well, yes and no. There was the small danger of steam explosions throwing bodies in. So you had to be kind of careful. Yeah, well, iron is one of the, about that. Yeah, iron. Yeah, exactly. Well, there's all sorts of different hazards, from chemicals to the molten iron itself, and I can attest personally that getting hit in the face with 1600 degrees Celsius molten iron is not something that I ever wanted checked off my bucket list, but I did. I'll say this much: thank God for science and the light and frost effect, and it was the smoothest shave in a splash pattern that I ever got, and mocked incessantly by the furnace watch. I timed my passage between the pour lines poorly that night.
So what I'm hearing is it works better than Nair.
Once.
And not the sensitive bits.
Yeah, I'd avoid the sensitive bits. I mean, I was fortunate that molten iron bounces, but if it would have had even a speck of slag in it, it would have burned through my head like napalm or thermite. Yikes. So yeah, you don't mess around with that stuff. And I like I said, I could tell all sorts of stories of how crazy those places are. And yeah, so industrial security had its own different nuances. While we didn't deal with crackheads or anything like that, every once in a while there was some personnel drama that you had to go in and just file the report. But I didn't have to clean out any dead bodies, and I never caught, but I did drive out lots of teenagers going through an abandoned iron foundry. So,
were you trying to use it as a meetup place, or were they just exploring?
Probably urban explorers, you would hope, but you never know. And there's also lots of other unexplainable events that, no, there couldn't be anybody in here. This room was sealed and no power, and the only one with the key at the time was me. So I'm not sure how that happened.
Okay. And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Nathan Pedde.
So I'm a science fiction fantasy author. I write a lot of medieval fantasy mecha. It's one of the projects I'm working on right now. And the other one is I am working on my science fiction wet dream of what 500 years in the future would look like. So I have a series of novellas, crime fiction, military sci-fi set in that world universe. And yeah, that's what I've been working on.
Okay, and the side chat is kind of lit tonight, but this would not be one we'd pay for admission to because in some states it would be illegal. I'm just going to leave that out there. But Nick is doing Nick, and Stabby is doing Stabby. So one of these days we'll have to do an. I'm
sure I committed like 5 crimes.
Yeah.
The Brits are going to come and arrest me for this.
Absolutely. All right. So the next thing is the religion questions, dear listener. But we've got another panel of all returning guests, so we're going to mix it up a little bit. MD, you have answered some of these questions, so you're just going to mix it up from your last time, but we can still answer it. But which TV series do you think deserves a sequel? And we're going to start with you, Nathan.
I would go Osaka. I'm not a Star Wars fan. However, Osaka is probably one of the Asuka. I can't pronounce it. I'm tired. It's been a long day. It's a Star Wars.
It's a Star Wars. Ahsoka. Yes.
Ahsoka.
Okay. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I was understanding. Otherwise, I'm like, is this a show I've not heard of?
I thought he was talking about some sort of anime thing with the way he pronounced it.
I thought so too. I was very confused. I'm like,
you're spooky, we get it.
Anyway, I'm staying in Wookiee. Ignore me. But
okay.
It's out of all of this Star Wars IP that's come out recently, it is one of the only ones that's decent. Where I actually care about the characters after 3 episodes. The rest of them is like, I don't care. They die, oh well. This one I actually care, which is a feat considering it's Star Wars.
Okay. What about you, Jesse?
So I think Cyberpunk Edge Runners. I think that there's more to do in Night City. You can't really do a sequel.
Or a TV series?
Yeah, it's a TV series. It's on Netflix. It's animated, though it's not anime. It's definitely Western style media. It's in the Cyberpunk 2077 universe, so it takes place before 2077. They can't do a sequel for reasons I won't spoil if you haven't seen it. But they could do a spiritual successor set in the same universe, and I think it would do really well. I think that IP needs more.
Okay. All right. Boncher.
I forgot what I said last time. But
Ask him off the cuff. Got you too.
huh?
I said then shoot off the cuff because I don't remember either.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them that I would love to see kind of either be remade. But as for a, shall we say, direct sequel, I guess for a direct sequel, I think I will stand on something I said previously, and that was Max Headroom. That one still totally deserves to get back in the public, especially updated for modern, virtual reality and podcasting and things like that. Max Headroom would be like the ultimate AI virus. I mean, that's like if Agent Smith was comedic at that point. That would just be an epic thing. But yeah, that as a sequel, that one could possibly work. And now I'm probably just got that idea stolen. But
Now the zeitgeist.
Yeah, zeitgeist away, right?
All right. What about you, Jesse?
Thought you got Jesse. Did we?
Yeah, you just got me. Or are we doing the next question?
Okay. I highlighted the wrong. I highlighted the wrong name and it confused myself for a second. All right, jeez. All right, Stabby. Which TV series deserves? Are you gonna let me finish the question? No? Okay. Firefly is an excellent answer. But would there be a second runner-up or something? So maybe you could, live a little.
Gargoyles.
Good choice.
Gargoyles.
That's a cartoon, right? That was like in the 90s.
Yep.
I'd be okay with a reboot too, but my whole thing is like last time you asked me these questions, you complained because I had 4 answers for each of the questions. So I'm trying to keep it down to 1. Nobody said Firefly, so I said Firefly. Now you want to back up? Do you want me to answer 4, or do you not want me to answer 4?
Stabby, we had a larger panel last time. You've got room to have a little bit of fun. I'm not gonna crap all over your parade or anything.
Right. Gargoyles would be really fun, I think, because it has been a long time since anybody actually even sat down and watched them. They were great for what they were, and I think we could do so much more with them now.
Would you want it as a cartoon still, or as a live action reboot?
Both. I think
live action would be more adult.
If we're gonna do a sequel, let's keep it as the cartoon and introduce it to the new generations. And if we're gonna go live action, then that will be the reboot. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What about you, Nick?
Say I got 4 answers.
Shit. What can I say that Stabby hasn't? So what TV series deserves a sequel?
No, that's the next one. Reboot.
Oh, reboot.
Oh, so no, sequel is this one. Reboot is the next one. Stabby got me all discombobulated. Damn it.
Got you all contorted.
Sequel. We're doing a sequel.
JR's been drinking too much tonight.
That's usually my job, JR. You can't. That's trademark infringement. You can't do that.
All right. So which one deserves a sequel?
TV series that deserves a sequel. Oh my God. Oh man. There's so many. Yeah, Mindhunters.
Mind or mine? M-I-N-E.
Mind, as in the mind, about the beginning of the FBI's behavioral analysis unit.
Oh, you said that one last time. Cool. All right.
It's a great series if you haven't seen it.
Is there any serial killer that you think they should cover that they didn't in the series?
Oh man, I don't know. They covered, and I know it's weird that I have like a top 10 list of favorite serial killers, which is horrible. Makes me a disgusting human being. I get it, Ed Kemper, you man. Even though you did some horrific shit, you were just truly mesmerizing as a psychopath, huh?
They got Richard Speck too.
And Richard Speck, yeah. Yeah.
They never got to talk to Bundy though.
No, they never talked to Bundy.
That would have been
so
cool.
That would have been interesting if they did that. But there's no the FBI didn't talk to Ted Bundy. So
Okay. So I'm going to call a sequel for my choices, even though I don't know if they technically would count because they just didn't get a second season. Because they didn't actually finish the plot arc. So first would be Terra Nova, because I want to know what the heck happened with all that like modern tech that was left in this like prehistoric dinosaur age, implying some other people came before them, or at least simultaneous to them, because that was kind of a big plot hole that was left wide open, and they didn't get the reboot because it's too expensive to make. I would like to think that modern technology with the CGI and all of that would make it cheaper to make these episodes now. So maybe it wouldn't be so expensive, because that's the whole reason it didn't get a reboot. It had the viewership. It just was too expensive to make each episode because, apparently dinosaurs are expensive to simulate. So I would say Terra Nova. The same reason I would say SGU, because they left us hanging. And I want answers. I want to know what happens once they all go to sleep. We want to know if the chubby kid actually makes it into the cryopod, or if he dies of old age, alone, forgotten. So we didn't get answers, and we deserve them. So that's another one that I think definitely deserves a second look. All right, and then if we're looking at a true sequel, I think there was more room on Andromeda for them to follow that spaceship a little bit deeper into the voids. So. All right, and next, which show deserves a reboot? So complete redo. Nathan.
Reboot.
Hey, there we go.
That's my answer. That reboot needs to be redone. It was an awesome show for its time and needs to be redone as an animated cartoon for kids nowadays.
Wait, reboot was actually a show, or are you just messing with me?
No, I'm not.
No,
It's a show.
100% for real.
Google it.
Okay.
It was
1990s kids computer animation.
Yep. Before computers were a major thing, and they were just making stuff up because they didn't know much about computers at the time. And like one of the main characters is called Dot Matrix.
like the printer.
That's her name. Is Dot Matrix.
Yep, lifted right from Mel Brooks.
Horrible.
The big enemy, the antagonist, his name is Megabyte.
That's not even that much space. I know that. All right. So now are they going to have like terabyte or gigabyte as the big bad? I don't know.
Yoda Byte.
They have Hexadecimal as another antagonist.
All right, Jesse, which series do you think deserves a reboot?
So I may have to run and copyright this real quick. I don't know, but it's not technically a TV series, but The Warriors, the movie. I think Warriors needs a reboot that is a HBO full season, or Netflix money full season, and they basically cover a different gang in each episode before the fight with the Warriors. So you get to see what the gang is like, you get to see what their culture's like, and then they end up with like much better updated modern martial arts, John Wick Extraction style fights for each episode.
Okay.
Come out and play. Improvised line.
Yep.
And I would gladly write and choreograph it if any movie investors or directors are watching right now.
Another little fun point about that same actor that plays Luther plays the bad guy, and I'm blanking on his name, in The Crow. T-Bird. He plays T-Bird in The Crow. Yep. Well, when I realized that, though, both movies suddenly go, same universe?
Technically, I would say the Warriors
Luther
exist in the
Crow universe.
Escape from New York universe is what I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
And a little bit of a Clockwork Orange for a little razzle dazzle.
Okay. And MD Boncher, which series deserves a complete reboot?
Well, this is once again going back to another Glenn A. Larson property that really could use it. They did it with BSG. They need to try and do it with Buck Rogers. kind of if they can sort of connect into the same vibe that they got in '79 with Gil Gerard and Aaron Gray, if you can still get a pair of actors that can carry like that, and the bummer. Okay, so the downside about the Buck Rogers 79-80 series is that it was actually a better property in certain ways that for at least modern audiences than what the originals would have been. The villains were better back then in comparison because TV show, everything got a little too villain incestuous, so who's on the fast batting rotation. But at the same time, it would be really kind of fun to see the previous iterations of Buck Rogers mashed up a little bit and then move forward to something for today's audiences. The problem is that you would see it would have to wait about 5 more years till this whole we have to make it for modern audiences trend goes away, and just try to be honorable to the original properties or the original creative efforts. But yeah, that one could really use a new swing at the ball.
They bring Ziggy back, I'm in.
Say what?
If they bring Ziggy back, I'm in. I don't care who they cast.
Ziggy.
I don't care what the story is.
You mean Tweaky?
Twiggy, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the problem is you don't have Mel Blanc to do the voice. That's the only downside. Well, Noel Blanc is out there.
Okay. All right, Stabby. Hit me with your list. Which series deserves a complete reboot?
Oh, you John.
Dinosaurs.
That was a show? Just dinosaurs?
It was called Dinosaurs, yeah. It was about a family of dinosaurs raising their kids, and the baby was always like, not the mama, not the mama.
Oh, that one. I know what you're talking about. Knock the mama.
Okay. Imagine Rosie and the
dinosaurs.
Spoiler, they died to the Ice Age.
Damn you. How do you ruin that show for us, Nathan? Jeez. Spoilers.
It's okay, Nathan. Somebody just found out last week that Stegosauruses, Brachiosauruses, and T-Rex were not alive at the same time. So Land Before Time couldn't have possibly happened. And now TikTok is having a meltdown. Like, people are crying. So, just saying. Dinosaurs.
Wow. Wait. So people thought the cartoon was possible.
Yeah. That all those baby dinosaurs could actually all be best friends because they were all dinosaurs, therefore they must be all alive at the same time.
I remember the Stegosaurus and the Brachiosaurus. What was the third one?
Was Little
Ducky,
Foot,
the Ducky,
Ducky, Petrie, and Spike.
Chomper was Spike and Chomper. Spike was the T-Rex. Chomper was Spike was the Stegosaurus. Chomper was the T-Rex.
Yeah, and I guess once they realized that the T-Rex, when the T-Rex came into the movie, that made everything else null and void because none of them were alive at the same time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, who knew cartoons weren't real? Yeah, you learn something new every day.
Yeah.
All right. Was that your entire list, or you got more? You can hit us up with some more.
I mean, we could always go with a reboot of Buffy or Angel or any number of shows from back in the day. Ally McBeal, Seventh Heaven. They could all use a reboot at this point because, like, a lot of the actors have done sketchy things. Leave a bad taste in your mouth watching them now. So,
director
no,
too.
I think I'm just gonna stick with dinosaurs and gargoyles. Let's keep it on the lizard front.
Okay. All right. Speaking of lizards, I mean our friend Nick. Which series do you want? I'm not saying you're one of the lizard people, but I'm also not saying it either. So we're just Jiminy Crickets, Jesse. Come on. How am I supposed to keep a straight face and conduct these interviews with you writing stuff like that in the side chat? So Nick, who's totally not one of the lizard people.
Not this week.
What series deserves a reboot?
Oh, The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr.
Briscoe. I don't know that I know that one.
It had Bruce Campbell in it, and it was kind of like a modern steampunk tech in the and weird stuff in like the Wild West. It was a great show, and it was on Fox, so it was a great show, and it went to a network where great shows go to die.
I hate Fox Entertainment.
But
Oh.
can that show survive without Bruce Campbell playing the lead? That's the
I
only
think it
question.
could. I think it could. There's a few actors out there that have Bruce Campbell energy. Like I think
Okay.
this is a hot take, but I need him to like drop down celebrity status a little bit. Matthew McConaughey would be able to do that role.
Oh man.
I could see it.
Because he's goofy. Another guy, Vince Vaughn, he could totally nail it.
I can see Vince Vaughn.
Vince Vaughn would definitely nail that.
Especially if he can channel that dodgeball vibe he's got.
Oh yeah, that the lazy slacker, but like has great ideas and can be motivated through certain things. I think it would be awesome.
Okay. All right. So for me, I'm going to go a little old school, and I definitely would love to see a Quantum Leap reboot. I think that could be kind of cool.
They already did it, and it failed.
Wait. They did a Quantum Leap reboot?
Yeah. And it failed.
I thought they were talking about it. I didn't realize they pulled it.
Well, I haven't seen the reboot, so I'm just going to assume that even if it failed, it deserves a reboot of the reboot then, and I'm still going to stick with, I think the concept could be kind of cool. I think Sliders, which was a 90s show where they were like going alternate dimensions hopping.
It just aged so poorly.
Yeah, but I mean, for campy goodness, it was pretty good. I like the actors.
Great concept.
Yeah, it's a great concept. The actors, I mean, I wouldn't even mind some of them coming back. They had skills. I mean, they weren't known actors. It wasn't like a big hit, but I definitely like Sliders. And then finally, the TV show V about the aliens coming that were like the lizard people, since Nick is a lizard person today. But I realized they redid it in the early aughts, but it didn't get a satisfactory end. They just kind of stopped it. So it was probably produced by Fox Entertainment, because that's what happens to all their shows. But either way, I think we deserve a reboot where they actually finish the plot arc. And it came out originally, I think, in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, it was I think it was on CBS.
So
Freddy Krueger got his start there on that show.
And then another reboot
On V, yeah.
Yeah. He
was
plays the guy with the speech issue because he was put in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Willie. The character's name was Willie.
Yeah. Beloved character. And then he gets Robert Englund gets the job of being Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, that was
owned
freak
that
out.
role too.
Yes.
And then we're gonna take Stabby and Jesse can speak for himself if you want to throw in your other ideas. Inspector Gadget and Carmen Sandiego, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think a lot of the 90s shows, with some caveats for how modern things tend to get remade, would make really good. There was a Mighty Max, which was like Johnny Quest, but fantasy instead, I guess is the best way to put it. Would make a fantastic modern reboot. There's a lot of things that we have like better animation now, or just more leaning into better budgets, and a lot of them that you could reboot for honestly the same kids that watched them grown up, that you could do and have a really good time with. Carmen Sandiego has all the bones for a really good mystery series, but she's an alluring femme fatale that would make a great adult show as much as a kid's show. So I think that would.
But in the season finale, she has to find Where's Waldo? I need her to find Waldo in the very last episode. It could be in the last 3 seconds. She could just turn a corner and Waldo will be standing there, and it's just them making eye contact.
Yeah, that or they meet at a coffee shop for a date.
Oh, like the song Pina Coladas.
Put a personal ad in the paper. Do you like pina coladas?
Okay. Carmen Sandiego did get a cartoon, but I liked Where in the World Was Carmen Sandiego, the game show deal. I had that as a computer game as a kid.
That was fun, and it stressed me out because it made me feel dumb. I'm like, I'm smarter than this.
Yeah,
I was good at geography. I was good at geography, so Where in the World Is Carmen Sandiego wasn't that difficult for me. But I enjoyed it every single time.
But did you find Waldo?
Didn't put it in the versions of the game that I had. Got to remember, this was back when we had computer labs and shared Apple IIs. And it was on a
Oregon Trail
floppy
days.
diskette. Oregon Trail. I was all the way up to Oregon Trail 2, which was the remake of it. Yep, they've done 3 versions of it. And number 1 is all text. Number 2 has limited graphics. And then number 3 is more graphical. And I think you can find those on a site called abandonware.com. You can find a lot of these old games on emulators there.
Nice. I died crossing the river a lot in Oregon Trail and of dysentery, of course.
Dysentery.
Always
Dysentery.
You talked about dysentery. You died by dysentery.
We had this one girl that was like vegan wasn't really a thing back then, but she was like vegetarian, so she refused to hunt in that section of the game, and she always died. And she kept saying it was discriminating against her for not eating meat because her characters always starved because they didn't have food if she wouldn't hunt for it, which I thought was hilarious. Because whatever, I just laughed.
Sorry, they don't have a graze option.
Right, but yeah, okay, all right, and then finally, what was your favorite cartoon as a kid, Nathan?
Reboot. I used to watch that religiously. Just whenever it was on YTV, I'd be watching it, and Gargoyles was a close second, but Reboot.
Okay. All right. What about you, Jesse?
I'm going to throw out a couple and we've talked about a lot of them. Mighty Max was awesome. Reboot was awesome. I remember Reboot. It was on UPN. Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z were huge. There was always arguments at the lunch table over Dragon Ball Z, who would beat who and who could do what and whatever. So yeah, I think that's a good spread. And I did really like dinosaurs as well.
Yeah, I don't know if that qualifies as a cartoon, but it's definitely good. That was Dinosaurs was part of the TGI Friday showing, right? Pretty sure.
Yeah. Oh, so. Beast Wars. That's another one that could do with Reboot too. Now that we've got such better computer graphics, it was Transformers, but it was all of them turning into animals, and nice. It was early CGI. Yeah.
All right. What about you, Mr. Boncher?
The problem I have is that I grew up in the era of the Saturday morning cartoons, and so I got like the cream of the crop and the crap at the same time. I have it sort of depends on what era of my life you'd ask me about favorite cartoons at that point. I guess in the 70s, I kind of went in with the Hanna-Barbera stuff more. But Herculoids and Space Ghost were two of my favorites. Though I really loved Johnny Quest when I was older. I owned the series of the originals, and boy howdy, I can see why it freaked me out as a young kid. But but kind of the last two out of my what I call my childhood era would have been tie between the Flash Gordon and the Flash Gordon cartoon, which was outstanding for the first season, and then they said, here are the producer's notes, and they wrecked it for the second. And then Thundar the Barbarian. But once I cleared that into and we started getting afternoon cartoons, the after school cartoons, number one with a bullet throughout my junior high years and then even into high school was Robotech. I would literally run home, so I could watch it because it was at the half hour. Right, I was 1/2 hour after school got out, and I had to run a mile home to go watch that, and then I had to leave to go do my paper route. But that one was probably the one I was the most motivated. That was soap opera for teeny bopper boys, early teen boys.
Okay, Stabby. Favorite cartoon as a kid?
Ask Nick first.
All right, Nick.
I was going to say Robotech. I was a huge fan. I'm a little bit younger, so I caught like the tail end of it, of the Macross saga, as they call it. But I don't know, man. Being a kid born in '78 and growing up through the '80s, I got inundated with some of the best cartoons ever. So there was a time where you would sit and watch G.I. Joe, Transformers after that, He-Man after that, and the Masters of the Universe. So you had all the just adrenaline pumping. So those three shows. But I'm like MD over here. It's like you got to hit me up at the right time in my life. So going into junior high and my freshman year of high school, I was a huge Batman animated series fan. Like I would ride home on my little Red Line 320 as fast as I could, so I could catch it on the WB. Love that show.
I'm still mad at He-Man. I have a beef with that dude. I'll never get over it.
That dude is made of beef.
So back in the day, they used to do this 1-800 number, 1-900 number, whatever it was, where you could call and you had to pay by the minute back in the day, and you could call to talk to He-Man. So I skipped school in like 5th or 6th grade. It was 5th grade because it's elementary school. And I called that number to talk to He-Man, knowing I was risking getting caught, and caught I did. My dad made me dig holes in the backyard for $0.01 an hour. So
I caught an ass whooping because of that 900 number.
Yeah, I called that number, and then it wasn't even like I got to talk to He-Man. No, I got a pre-recorded, basically drink your Ovaltine kind of message, and we're like, Make sure you talk to your parents first. And I'm like, what parent is saying yes to this? Everyone that calls you is sneaking, right? Like, come on. And then to not even get to talk to him or even an actor pretending to be him, I'm still salty. Like, it wasn't even worth the ass whooping I got, right? Like, if I'm going to get in trouble, I'll put up with a lot if it's worth it. I mean, sometimes you just do that cost-benefit analysis, and you're like, totally worth it, right? This was not one of those instances, and I'm still a little bitter. So, all right.
So you literally had the Bugs Bunny moment of, if I do it, I get a whooping. I do it.
Basically. So yeah, like Nick, I was definitely into the G.I. Joe and the Transformers. But I'll throw in there some Smurfs because I don't know why, it was just amusing. Smurfs was the cartoon. Thundercats for obvious reasons because awesome. And Peter Pan, we used to watch that before school, before we'd run out and catch the bus. Hold on, let me make Nick solo. Nice. But yeah, it was Peter Pan in the morning before school, and that was partly because it was just one thing my sisters and I could all agree on. So we didn't get any fights. And then an honorable mention, it was coming out right when I was getting too old for cartoons, but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would be on that list, I guess. So
they're making another movie. It's going to be R-rated. It's based off The Last Ronin.
So I watched it as a cartoon. I knew they did the live action stuff, which I thought was kind of crap.
They were awesome, especially Turtles in Time.
I for reasons we won't go into, I haven't been able to look at them since post deployment, but yeah. So I watched the cartoon as a kid, so it definitely gets an honorable mention. All right, and finally, because we are shameless shills and we are marketing affiliates with the coffee brand coffee. What?
I said let Nick go first. I said let Nick go first because I have a list.
Oh, okay.
You've been asking for a list, but cartoons are a whole different ballgame than asking me what I want rebooted.
Okay. Hit me with the list.
Pinky and the Brain, Johnny Bravo, Darkwing Duck, Animaniacs, Batman the Animated Series, Captain Planet, Freakazoid, Tailspin, Tom and Jerry, Bonkers.
Oh, hold up. Did you write this down? Because I can't type that fast for show notes. Hold on. Did you write this down? Because I can't talk that fast for show notes. All right.
I have
perfect.
Notes.
All right. And can you read that list in slow motion for the rest of us?
Never doubt my love of cartoons. Okay, never. Pinky and the Brain, because who doesn't love Pinky and the Brain? Johnny Bravo, Darkwing Duck, Animaniacs, Batman, the animated series, Captain Planet, Freakazoid, Tailspin, Tom and Jerry, Bonkers, DuckTales, and Tales from the Crypt Keeper. There's your slow down.
Okay, Darkwing Duck was a good one. Captain Planet, also good. By the powers of our rings combined. But I don't know. I felt like Captain Planet was kind of underutilized. It was always just, I don't know. There's definitely some room for improvement in the way they utilize the powers and all the things. So, all right. Now, is the list good? Are we good? Can we rock on?
SWAT
I
cats.
can keep going if you want.
I thought by limiting it to 2 instead of the 4 that we asked last time, we wouldn't be at the hour mark when we were doing the nostalgia run, but apparently nostalgia runs deep. All right, so because we are shameless shills for the man, which in this case is the Coffee Brand Coffee Company, what was the first coffee beverage that you had, Nathan?
Tim Hortons, and I regret every drop.
Why do you regret Tim Horton?
Because it tastes like utter garbage.
I thought Timmy Hortons was like a staple of Canada land.
Wendy's bought it and went all downhill from there.
Okay.
Well, honestly, they did a test a while ago and trying to see the amount of caffeine is in different coffee brands. Tim Hortons is one. It's about a third the next competitor for the same size. So it's just crap coffee, hands down.
Coffee without caffeine is just sinful.
Literally, it's you're buying cream and sugar. That's what you're drinking. Cream and sugar.
The only time decaf is appropriate is if you're dying for coffee, but it's too late at night.
Oh no, this is not decaf. This is regular coffee.
Then that is a fraud, and they need to be sued. By the coffee squads, they need to be hit. That somebody needs to press the smite button.
You guys can drink coffee at night and stay awake. If I drink coffee at night, I fall asleep.
That's a known phenomenon for people that have actually ADHD. And
I was about to say
ADHD. Probably everybody here, but yeah, I can drink coffee at night, and unfortunately, it will then go random choice. Spin the wheel of fate on whether or not it keeps me up until 5 a.m. or here late at night and drinking a Monster. Oh boy!
One more chapter. More chapter.
Yeah, then I wake up randomly at 3 a.m. and she's not even sleepy.
Yeah, that's
one more
like
chapter.
I said. Caffeine in me after the afternoon. It's Russian roulette of stay awake.
Yeah, it's also
productive.
It's also a symptom of the sleepy factor with that is a symptom of TBI, but that has a lot of overlaps with ADHD symptoms. Because when they were trying to explain it to the spouse when I was going through the clinic at Walter Reed, they're like, imagine you went to sleep normal and you woke up with ADHD. That's what a head injury is like. But all right, so Jesse, first caffeinated beverage that you remember, coffee specifically or tea, whatever.
I'm sure it was coffee. I grew up with a lot of coffee drinkers. There was a lot of long nights, and that led to a lot of coffee. Again, coffee had never really been my thing. I'm a hot chocolate guy, and tea on very rare occasion. So that'll be that, But I'm sure it was like just a home pot of coffee.
All right, and what about you, Jess? Or sorry, MD.
What was the question again about when
you first had coffee?
Probably was given to me at my at the farm when I was visiting my grandparents, and it was black and it was evil and not fit to be drunk by anything. But then a few years after that, my mother introduced me to coffee candy, back in the day they used to make true coffee candies that were actually creamy and sweet and I suddenly said, I like coffee. How do I make coffee taste this way?
Was that the Werther's?
No, this is 30 years before Werther's. I mean, or at least before Werther's became truly popular. When did Werther's become popular? Like late 90s?
I don't know. I remember like they had they were getting away from the butterscotch that they're known for, and they did this like coffee flavored one that was just amazing.
Oh, it's good. It's close, but it's not quite right compared to this. This stuff came in double wrapped foil. It had no branding on it whatsoever. It was mid to early 70s. So somewhere, yeah. So it wasn't Werther's. I know that much, but Werther's coffee is close. But at the same time, that's what made me go, I like coffee after all. I just have to get it to the point. Now, I'm sure about so many military men out there are just screaming in pain just hearing that. But I fully admit, I am a wuss. I am a coffee wuss. I want all the frou-frou crap. I love it. Send me to Caribou. Caribou coffee is, okay, out of all the coffee chains in there, give me Caribou every time. Okay, except if it's Dunn, who have a Dunn Brothers in the area because they make true ice creamas. Those things are freaking awesome, but that's the only thing at Dunn Brothers. Otherwise, Caribou. Unfortunately, I'd have to drive literally an hour and a half to get to the closest one in Virginia. So it doesn't happen. And I don't have to go up to Staunton anytime soon. So I have to suffice myself with a whole bean I can get on the shelf.
So I think my first one was probably when I went hunting with my stepdad for the first time. And I just remember that we were talking about the dangers of being in an actual like hunting area. So there, bears were around as well as wolves and whatnot in the mountains. And I asked what happens if bears or wolves came to the campsite. And I just remember with an absolute straight face, my stepdad looked at me and he says, if it comes down to a choice between your life and the coffee pot, save the coffee pot. I can make more kids. And that's when I knew the universe. And they wonder why my drill sergeants couldn't phase me with their insults. And I'm like, come on, I heard worse from my mother. Do better. They hurt me in other ways, but the insults.
I think your parents and my parents used to go out and go bowling.
Up your game, bro.
Well, your dad was a SEAL. My stepdad was in the special boat unit. So I imagine it's the Spec War Navy version of parenting is what we both received.
Suck it up because life gets harder.
Oh, you think that was fun? Let me make it worse. Yeah, that was my dad.
He taught me to swim by binding my hands and my feet together and pushing me in the frickin' pool, teaching me how to do bobbers.
So I learned to swim. When most kids are learning to swim, I had tubes in my ear, so I couldn't get in the water. So by the time I could, because the tubes were removed at that point in time, I just had no real interest in it. So I got to AIT for my second Army MOS as a watercraft operator. The Navy parlance would call it bosun's mate, and the Navy at the time.
Boys.
Right, the Navy at the time was really big on civilian certification, and they did not have that. So we went to the U.S. Navy for damage control certification, and we went to Norfolk Navy Base, the USS Buttercup, which is basically a PT boat in a pool, so they can kind of control the leakage and all of that. And the instructor recognized me because he served with my stepdad, and so he followed us when we went on our cruise. And I guess my stepdad had given him the what for, so he decided to get a little even. And when he found out I couldn't swim, we were in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay, and I had just taken my flotation device off so we could do our lunch stretches or whatever. And he pushed me overboard, and he just looks at me and he goes, "Hey, Handley, you could die or you could learn to swim. See you on the other side." And I thought he meant it. Like, realistically looking back, they would have come back and got me if I couldn't have swum. But I thought I was going to die. And, not dying is a hell of a motivator.
You learn quick.
I learned to swim. So this was a guy, when he was an E1 in the Navy as undesignated, he worked for my stepdad's damage control unit. And he decided he liked playing damage control because it's the Navy version of a war game where if you can outthink the instructors, you can mess with them something fierce. And that's what the simulation training is all about. Like, how can you get one over on the instructors? That's part of the fun. And then this is where it comes in, Nick. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Damn straight. If you get caught, you ain't trying hard enough.
Absolutely. All right. And with that, it was memorable, so I did enjoy it, so I can't really complain. With that, we're going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly shill for the man. And, man, we go deep on nostalgia. We ought to have an episode where it's nothing but nostalgia.
Gonna have to at this rate.
Yeah. All right. And with that, boom.
The government underestimated the outbreak. The best medicines couldn't stop it. Now, the dead are walking the streets, and they're hungry. Zombie Patient Zero is 9 tales of flesh-ripping, brain-splattering mayhem from Bayonet Books, the boldest name in action and horror anthologies. From deep space to luxury resorts, nowhere is safe. Zip up your hazmat suit and dare to find out how it all went wrong. Zombie Patient Zero, from the deranged minds that brought you Contact This and Storming Area 51. Pick up your copy today in paperback or Kindle.
All right, thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. And
You're
let's
welcome.
see. So with that out of the way, we did Nick, just as us talking shop a little bit. We did a 80s cartoon episode. I think we ought to do the 90s and the early aughts, and maybe even go back to the 70s, so we can invite some of our more seasoned authors on.
Used to binge watch old cartoons. Yes, please.
All right, we're gonna have to put that on the season 5 docket. Not that the list isn't already long enough.
I'm in.
All right, so now we're here to talk about, because this is a topic Nick suggested, when horror becomes science fiction. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so first off, Nick, set us up. Why did you pick this topic, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I'm a huge fan of science fiction, and then later in life became horror. And then when I started cross-evaluating things that I loved in science fiction that scared me, that could be considered horror, like Aliens, Predator, Frankenstein. The creatures themselves scared the living shit out of me, But it was meant to be a science fiction action movie, Michael Biehn, one of my favorite stars, from that era. So that's what kind of got me thinking. You were asking for ideas, and I'm like, man, there is a very thin line in a lot of cases between science fiction and horror. Event Horizon is a perfect example of that. So that's what gave me the idea.
Event Horizon, I know that one at least. And yes, Jesse, as we pointed out.
Yeah.
As we pointed out, this is the first horror episode that we didn't blame on Stabby, because this was not her idea.
I don't know. Let's say it's influenced by Stabby, because we watch horror movies every night, 2 or 3 of them. So, and then I have to go in there. I'm like, can we watch this one? It's sci-fi horror. And she's like, it's horror though. And I'm like, sci-fi horror? She's like, okay. And then I get to watch Spectre again.
Technically speaking, Frankenstein is sci-fi horror.
Yep.
Technically speaking.
It is the first
It
sci-fi
invented
horror.
the genre effectively.
Yeah. All because a couple of people in the Victorian era got drunk and created a bet of who could write the scariest story.
Drunk and stoned in a gothic style.
It's pre Hemingway. It's the Hemingway effect before Hemingway was a thing.
So what drugs were involved in the creation thereof?
Laudanum.
Opium.
Lots of.
We're at horror moment.
Edgar Allan Poe invented horror only a couple of decades before Mary Shelley Wollstonecraft came up with the modern Prometheus. And the two just smashed together that dark and stormy night.
Interesting.
I catalog our horror movies. I catalog our horror movies as we watch them, and I try to beat our previous year's numbers. And we started a little later this year because of how we started the year with Nick having his stroke. So we started our list a bit later in the year, and we are at 269 horror movies, and that's without the repeats, because I'll go back and I'll watch all the Screams or the Jaws movies or the Friday the 13th. I'll go back and I'll rewatch them throughout the year. And when we were discussing different aspects that we liked in our horror movies and in our sci-fi movies, because I rewatch the Alien movies at least 4 or 5 times a year, we both discovered that it is the ones where it's possible that it could legit happen. Those are the scariest ones, both in sci-fi and in horror. It's the ones that could legitimately happen, like the new AI movie where the Amazon Alexas are taking over the family's whole life. And it's like, I tell my little one all the time, I'm like, dude, you need to stop yelling at her because she is just taking your alarm right now, but like, stop being mean to her. I don't want to die in the middle of the night. So we do sit down and talk about it. So he can sit over there and try to give me credit all the time, but it's a conversation that we do have quite often.
Is it?
Okay. The one we're gonna actually review later this season was the Megan, because that's another one where it's like robot toy for kids that goes a little off the deep end.
That's child's play, snorting cocaine.
Yeah, but with instead of a doll, it's a robot. But yeah, so I can see the overlap. I mean, space horror. Isn't there that one? There's that one game. I'm drawing a blank on what it is. It's a game that is.
Dead Space.
What's that?
Dead Space.
Yes, Dead Space is kind of the first I became aware of horror sci-fi together. I've even written one, although I don't have a commercial for it. It would have been the episode today. So I mean, there's definitely a lot of overlap. If nothing else, like horror, largely it's the setting that makes it scary, that ambiance you create more than anything, which is why you can get horror movies where you don't see the bad guy until, right at the end, and it's still scary. And I mean, what's more unnerving than the emptiness of space and then finding out it isn't so empty, right? Like, I'm definitely there. What about the rest of you? Got thoughts before we dive in deeper?
I think the two blend really well just because of the natural fear of consequences. Like we have seen and lived through, and hopefully I don't stir up as much of a pot as I think I will with this. We have lived through the consequences of scientific exploration gone wrong. It shut down our country for a couple of years when it got loose. When you start messing with disease and you start messing with genetics in a lab, you can accidentally unleash real life terrible consequences. And so it's cold. Yeah. So that's, I love Jurassic Park because I love dinosaurs. But Jurassic Park absolutely has a real life premise to it that if we were capable of that level of genetic manipulation, we would do it.
I would even say that Jurassic Park is a sci-fi horror movie.
It is.
It is.
It is. Pitch Black, another great one, another great sci-fi horror movie that are honestly, I've said I'm very picky about horror movies, but mostly because I believe horror is an attribute and not a genre. That's probably going to stir some people up too. But I do
completely agree.
I do believe that you write really good stories and you have horror elements in them. You put the horror into the good story. But if the story couldn't stand without the creepy stuff, it wouldn't stand anyway.
You can classify
my heart, sir.
You can classify a horror movie in one or two categories. Either the creepy, scary things is coming from a fantastical supernatural element, which is unexplainable because it's fae or vampires or whatever, or it's sci-fi and it's some type of alien or scientific thing. We did something to fuck something up, and that is.
Or it's a thriller because it's a serial. Yeah, or a mystery. Yeah.
Well, you got three basic areas where a lot of horror comes from, and that's from within. How does it go again? It follows the three basic traumas or conflicts of man versus man versus self, and man versus God, and the horror of the unknown or the cosmic horror often is one of the things that blends the most with science fiction. Yeah, man versus nature, man versus God, same thing. It is the powers that be beyond any earthly control, or at least any human control. Man versus society, yeah, man versus society is still man versus man, and there's been many autopsies done on those three, depending on the philosophical point of view. But yeah, science fiction just naturally blends into it because one of the biggest sources, of course, is the unknown for fear. We're hardwired for horror or for fear to come out of what we do not know or do not understand. It's why we're afraid of the dark. It's not because it's a silly superstition. No, there's good reasons why. You can't see. You don't know what's there, and there could be a threat there, and that fires off all the little synapses in the brain. And that is one of the biggest fears. Another one is fear of contamination. This is the evil gets in you, the fear of possession, the fear of infection and disease. Yeah, exactly. That plays exactly into it. And those are topical right now because we're living in such close proximity. I mean, America generally has the benefit of not having too many pockets of high density people, but we've also now seen mass formation psychosis going on. But zombies is the fear of what's out there and whether or not it's going to get into you and make you into one of them, whatever them is. And that also
has 1.5 million people in it.
Oh, well, yeah, that's what I said. It's small pockets of areas that have it. Like New York City, for instance, yeah, exactly. You'll see a lot more.
New York, yeah,
yep.
Like
the urban areas,
densely populated areas, yeah, where infection, you get World War Z level shit going on.
Oh yeah.
Which is scary.
Because then
I'm gonna defend my World War Z zombies because they did not attack the sickly people, and that is the coolest thing that you ever see in any of the zombie movies or books or anything. Is that they're not just attacking everybody. There's the kid with cancer, the soldier with the bummed knee and everything. And they do not go for those sickly people. They want the strongest of the population. And I absolutely loved that about them because I'm over here like, I'm safe. But one thing that I was explaining to my little monster in the other room was I love the difference when something is happening to the kids, to the characters in a movie, and all the doctors are like, it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. And it winds up being completely something else, something psychic versus something physical. Perfect example is Insidious. You know, the whole time they were saying he had meningitis and this, that, and the other. And the whole time he was just out here astral projecting and got too far from his body. And my band nerd of a son, God bless him, goes, Mom, I don't think this movie would be scary if it weren't for the sharp violin when something scary is about to happen. So we watched the whole movie and then we went back and we rewatched it on mute. And he's like, I think that made it scarier. And I was like, why so? And he's like, because now I don't know to anticipate to be afraid. I don't know when.
Huge.
He's like, I didn't know that guy's face was going to be behind the mom or this, that, or the other. And I was like, that is where your music comes in. And music is a big part of it. You don't know to be scared of Jaws unless there's the da-da, 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 you know? So I think when it comes to the physical versus the paranormal versus whatever it is in each of the movies, you definitely need to sit down and I watch the secondary characters more than the main characters because I'm like, how do you not see what's going on? How do you not see like all the characters?
Interesting point there you make with the whole sound, with the sound and the soundtrack being a big deal. There are people that remix trailers for movies out there, and they do like Sound of Music, but as a horror film. And you change the music, all of a sudden, and you choose the right shots, that thing's a scary stalker flick. Or Tommy Boy as an Oscar-winning drama with uplifting music and everything like that. Suddenly, that stupid comedy becomes, okay, this is Oscar-worthy. It is incredible. And I remember watching a video on Film Analysis talking about how low drones and high drones mixed together. These are two sounds not found in nature together. A low, deep tone is a sound of a predator. And you don't hear that without something big, scary, can possibly eat you with it. And the high tone is often dealing with and is dealing with distress and small animals like babies, children, pets. And you will hear those two together. They form a dissonance, some cognitive dissonance in your brain, making you feel unease. It was really interesting to kind of see it. That's why you hear in movies so often those two things together.
It's definitely something, and they do the same thing with visual things as well, because Freddy Krueger's sweater, the red and the green, on old school film and even VHSs, the way that our TVs were set up, we didn't have 4K TVs, we didn't have crystal presentation or anything. So those two colors together aren't supposed to work together with your eyes at all. And it makes him seem more like a dream. Because your eyeballs almost, and your eyes almost want to like fuzz him out. And they do it with absolutely everything. And if you guys can't tell, I absolutely love all of this. I was a theater geek. I loved it. True, hair, makeup, and costumes. And sitting down and learning why they did things the way that they did, especially back in the 70s, the 80s, and even some in the 90s, like you're looking back and you're like, that was genius. It was absolutely genius.
Yep. You can actually get away with something similar using the other two pair of oppositional colors, and that is blue, orange, and yellow, purple. You have the primary with its secondary complement across from it. It causes a tangle up in your visual and in the cones and rods in your eyes, and that's part of why you kind of squint at it funny, and it gives you a strange sensation. Horror comes a lot from having that cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how half the world ends up arguing over a dress?
Yes.
No, that's just one of the most stupid.
and we all see colors differently. I never realized how bad we all see colors differently until I actually bought myself a Christmas dress, and my son's like, "Mom, blue's not a Christmas color," and I'm like, "It's green."
The color blindness.
Was it actually blue or was it green?
It was. The tag itself said forest green, so I'm sticking with my analysis. It was green. It's just the way that people see color.
Well, here's a fun one for you. In the Viking, in the Old Norse language, Norrönt, black and blue were both the same color in their language, and so is yellow and red. There is no yellow color. All yellow, gold, red, orange, all red. And same with blue and black. Same thing. That's why you have Harold Bluetooth. It wasn't blue. His tooth wasn't blue. It was a dead black tooth. But it doesn't sound as cool as Bluetooth. But it makes you wonder then what exactly language can do to your perceptions. I can't remember. Come on, brain. There was a study done on African tribes. Oh, the illusion of the impossible fork, where it looks like a three-tined fork, but when you look at it, things just don't work. And so there was a test done where they took different cultures and asked people to reproduce this. And Western cultures that they had the people try to reproduce the image, they had an extremely difficult time because they were processing the image as if it was a three-dimensional image. When they took the same image to Africa or more primitive parts of India and China or Asia at the time, They had no problems with it because their brains were not trying to render this as a 3D object. They were trying to just imitate the pattern like it was a symbol of some sort of pictogram of some type. And they had no problems reproducing it. So our language and the way that we learn to process the world will do a lot of work in that front too.
I think Lovecraft actually carried that over really well in some of his concepts, because the ancient tribes that interacted with deep ones and things like that could handle that process and not go batsy. But if anybody from a modern society interacted with the same group and had to deal with it, they would go insane. And I always thought that was cool.
That really brings up a very interesting point in, I guess, the real world of a possible horror situation we could be facing. And that is, okay, so we've slowly been hearing at opportune times that aliens, yes, are real and do exist. What if there was an actual reveal of aliens? Would we get Kay from Men in Black going, a person is smart, but people are dumb, panicky, and stupid, and dangerous? So the question is, with the or worse, even more than alien, I think Western civilization would handle aliens better. But what if all of a sudden the old gods, quote, 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 turned out to be real and proved their existence, either the angelic or demonic entities, whatever you want? What would a culture that has had religion, spirituality, and parapsychology almost completely expunged from polite society do in regards to that? I think the freak out would be cataclysmic.
We're also a society that we are living with AI fakes. So it would be a stretch for people to get to where they actually would believe something would be. You'd have to see it, or else they'll never believe it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So there'd be a lot of people who'd be like, yeah, there's no aliens, there's no Cthulhu or whatever that it is. They're not going to believe that unless it's standing and right in front of them.
It's just eating your Aunt Nancy. I think I might believe it now.
This isn't crazy. Buy you at least another 4 years.
I actually went to school with he didn't really have a religion, but his whole family, I went and I had dinner with his family, and his whole family believed that the angels people saw coming from the sky, the demons they saw coming from hell, and God themselves were aliens, and we were all put here on Earth by the aliens, because we are the aliens, and we were put here as a test to see if we could survive and thrive here.
Does the name Zachariah Sitchin ring any bell?
No.
There's a series of books written by some pseudo-archaeologist that basically says exactly that. And it's fiction. It's a misinterpretation.
Man, I want the meme so bad right now. The aliens guy. Aliens. I'm not saying it's aliens.
It definitely threw me for a loop. So I was raised Catholic. I was raised Roman Catholic. So we were like the strict of the strict. And I remember sitting there and staring at its family. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I mean, it could be. Who am I to say it's not? You know? And I think that definitely threw my whole family for a loop, because I was also the kid that got kicked out of Sunday school for saying Jesus was a zombie.
He's a lich.
Yes, we all, everybody knows that conversation between us left.
Gotta remind you.
But it definitely threw my family for a loop. They're like, how are you part of our family? And I'm like, I'm open-minded. So I definitely, I remember, I will never forget that dinner. It was definitely the strangest dinner I ever had, just sitting there listening to them. But it also opens up another avenue of thought.
And now we're all thinking. Dun, dun, dun.
Waiting for the host to do host things.
Yeah.
So,
already.
Well, she's one of the hosts, so she's allowed to do that. So we're when we start talking about sci-fi horror, Like you're talking about aliens and that kind of stuff, and that tends to be now forward thinking. Is there any examples of that set farther back aside from Lovecraft? Like more in history, like I don't know. Like
Could you
Lovecraft
rephrase
and
the
Howard
question?
are the earliest that I know.
we're just wondering if there are any examples of that kind of sci-fi horror element that isn't set in modern times. It would be older. I know aliens had the Predator. No, Predator came to the Native Americans. I can't remember what that was called. Is the closest I can think
Prey.
of.
Is it Prey?
Right. Yes.
The name of the movie was Prey.
Yeah. Are there any other examples like that where they go further back?
Oh, you're just talking about the setting, or are you actually talking about like that were created in earlier fiction?
Why not both?
I don't know.
Okay.
Let's ask the guy that has a degree in anthropology of religion over there.
Okay, so I not mistakenly, I just kind of stumbled into a minor in college because I liked the professor. He was this 18 Delta dude. He was a special forces medic in Vietnam, and he taught anthropology. And I loved the way he taught. And he had this ponytail, and he had about as much teeth as a fucking jack-o'-lantern. You know, he was a cool dude, and I took all of his classes because he was awesome. You know, and he was one of those dudes that your typical Vietnam guy, you know, is like, oh God, I hated the war, but I did this cool shit, and I married a Vietnamese woman. You know, it's like he was that dude. You know, but the way he just, you know, expelled information and knowledge and imparted knowledge, I just found interesting. So I took every class to the point where the VA was like, this isn't your major, man. We're not going to pay for these freaking classes. I'm like, I don't give a shit, man, because you're going to pay me, and I'm going to use that money to pay for these classes because that's how interesting this dude is. So when I put in my application for graduation, I paid my $75 or whatever it was. They're like, hey, did you know that you qualify for a minor in anthropology? I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with that, along with my major, which was graphic art and design. Obviously, I'm doing that. But I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? They're like, yeah, that's another $25 if you want to put your minor on there. I'm like, Uncle Sugar's paying for it. Here you go. Here's $25.
To answer your question, JR, they just did God, what was the number? 65 or whatever. It was the Adam Driver movie. It was
65 million.
Yeah, 60. Yeah, and it was basically humans crash landing on prehistoric Earth and having to deal with the fact that it was dinosaurs. And so it was technically sci-fi horror because this was a pre-Earth human civilization, and that pre-Earth human civilization then landed and had to deal with the horrific situation of dinosaurs. So it's a horror action movie based around that.
So I did look it up real quick. The movie is just called 65.
With Adam Driver? That's a great
yeah. And he actually was a Marine, so he's a veteran.
Mm-hmm. Infantry. Cool. 0311. Congratulations, you made it.
I know that reference. Yeah, so I like that as an example. And there was the one where Will Smith's son, who can't act, the guy's as wooden as a stake. But he had one where they were landing on, essentially it was like Earth, but it was mutated stuff. There was an example of sort of going back to, the implication was they were going back to sort of pre-Earth, whatever, or pre-human Earth. But I don't recommend that movie at all. Like I said, the main character can't act to save his life. But are there any other examples?
I'm still unclear on the question.
So, just more sci-fi horror that goes, back chronologically. So set in older times. I don't know. So if the event happened in the past or it was written in the past as one of the OGs in the subgenre.
Well, technically that counts for everything written before present day. All science fiction is a time capsule of its period and its philosophies. So that's why you see things like what we would call Tesla punk nowadays, with the heat rays and the workings with, you know, what Tesla was working on with wireless power. It's a lot of stuff that we now call science fact because we're using it daily when we pick up our little devices here.
That's a classic example of Tesla horror.
Which one?
The Prestige.
Oh,
Hugh
yeah.
Jackman and
I don't know. Yeah,
that other idiot played Batman, Christian Bale.
that other idiot. His first movie was in Spielberg's Empire of the Sun, if I recall correctly.
It was a good movie. It's a very good movie.
But yeah, I mean, technically, all we need is time ourselves to separate from when something was written. H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, all those guys are classic examples of what was considered science fiction. A lot of it became science fact, some of it not so much, but they're now historical, what was written for their modern day.
All I wish is for them to build me a Nautilus.
I was actually going to suggest Jules Verne, but I wasn't sure if it crossed the line into being horrific enough to be horror, like the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Well, you got to think about the perception of reality of people at that time if they read that. Like science fiction, like just science alone could be horrific.
Mm-hmm.
Going to
Metropolis?
the moon, Metropolis, which inspired Star Wars, at least the droids. Love that. So these are all things that I discovered in my late 20s, you know, when I did research on things that I enjoyed, like Metropolis. And I watched it. I'm like, man, this movie's messed up. And then I watched THX 1138, also messed up, which is just a derivative of 1984. You know,
Logan's Run, classic.
Society
is the enemy. Yeah.
You know, if they do Paradise Lost, I'm going to lose it.
I mean, otherwise you have to look at Doctor Who. That's science fiction throughout all of history. I mean, and then you have
the Weeping Angels, which brings in a horror element. Which
good Lord, the rogues gallery of Doctor Who monsters as long as my arm. I mean,
that shit's nightmare fuel, bro.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. You hit the Tom Baker years, and all of a sudden, all the writers got a gothic horror freak out going on. From
it was so good. It was so
horror
good.
of Bang Rock, Towns of Wenchang, the Image of the Fendal, the Seeds of Doom, the Ark in Space. I mean, there's the Weir and the Crinoids. I just actually watched
the list is
Earthshock.
as long as my body.
Yeah.
And anybody else.
I will not watch.
Body.
But as far as I'm concerned, everything stopped with Matt Smith. Everything else is a no joy, no bueno. You forgot what you were doing.
I'll agree with that. Not a Capaldi fan. That's another episode.
Yeah, I will say Capaldi is an outstanding actor, but they did him dirty with some. Yeah, it was. You know, it just wasn't the right role necessarily. And I don't know anything really about Jodie Whittaker. I won't say anything bad about her, but I also know what they were doing at this time. Yeah, that's nice. I've heard nothing bad about her. It's just they forgot what they were doing and they decided to go agenda instead of entertainment. And okay, that's fine. I will not be here. By the way, I will credit a Capaldi episode of giving me a replacement for the phrase "jump the shark," and that's "kill the moon." That episode where they killed the moon was just like, nope, check, we're done. And yet he had two very good episodes. The whole Orient Express in space was absolutely inspired. And the Flatland inspired one was just... Now, there is an absolutely terrifying monster out of the Capaldi era right there. The Flatland inspired two-dimensional creatures. Yikes.
So Stabby mentioned in the side the Journey to the Center of the Earth, which then was made in a movie with Brendan Fraser. Would that be considered horror? I consider it adventure fiction. I don't know that I'd call that horror though.
They got chased by a T-Rex.
If having a scary scene, then any action movie is technically a horror movie because, you know, without the fear of death, there is no consequences. The fights don't matter.
Angry fauna does not count as a monster.
It's subjective. You got to have a monster. What's more monstrous than ancient freaking dinosaurs that want to eat you.
If we go back to what is a horror fiction and what is not a horror fiction is something that is intended to disturb, frighten, or scare. I'm reading with Wikipedia. It is often divided into subcategories, subgenres. So is that story meant to scare you, or is it just meant to entertain and be in a nice adventure with scary elements?
I would, even if it was a nice adventure story with scary elements, I still consider that horror. But you also have to think about the ages that people are introduced to horror. So I was introduced to horror by watching Aliens. I don't know when my parents let me watch that. I thanked them for it. But the xenomorph scared the shit out of me. Look how scary that fucking monster is.
Okay, I got a qualifier then or a way to sort of see the difference between the two. Difference would be focus. Alien. You're focusing on the alien as the big bad. Jurassic Park. The dinosaurs are the big bad. Journey to the Center of the Earth, not the focus. That's an event.
But
that's
had
like saying
horror
the boulder,
elements and still kind of scared you.
Yeah, it had. Okay, so a dinosaur could be construed as a horror element in Journey to the Center of the Earth, but in any one of the kids' dinosaur films, it's not. The point is that a dinosaur unto itself, for example, is not horror, nor is predation by a larger critter. But if you focused on the dinosaurs, like Jurassic Park being the big bad or the danger, then yes, it absolutely would be a horror element.
Has everybody read Jurassic Park, the Michael Crichton novel?
Yep.
Yeah, I've read all of them.
Pure terror and nightmare fuel.
Yes,
it was written to be horrific. It's meant to be.
And that's a scary story.
They left out so many scenes. They left out so many of the good scenes in all of the renditions of film, like the scene where the dinosaurs had gotten off the island, and this family's camping on the beach shore. Not camping. They're enjoying the beach, and their daughter goes off to the bushes behind them to, do what kids do, explore, right? While mommy and daddy are drinking, whatever. And suddenly this little tiny, I don't want to say it's a velociraptor, tiny dinosaur of some sort.
The Compysaurus.
The Compysaurus. Yeah. There we go. Like, what's more horrific than thinking, like, I blink for a second and dinosaurs are eating my kids?
Yeah.
They put that in, I think, the second or third. I can't remember, but that's in one of them.
Second. It was the Lost World. The second movie starts the way the first book starts. There's so many weird things they do with that. Having loved both, like loving the movies as a kid and then growing up and reading the novel and loving the novel, they don't do Muldoon any justice. The old hunter, his book character's so much cooler. He's got a rocket launcher on standby for the T-Rex. Like, the man was actually useful in the novel instead of being just absolutely useless in the movie, doing nothing but getting eaten.
Like, you get a quick meme line and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is defining what's horror and what is just sci-fi or fantasy is all about intent. Jurassic Park, the dinosaurs, is the horror element. It is a scary novel. It is a scary novel. It's a scary movie. Jesus Christ, okay?
Stabby is not a horror. Is not horror. She is just dressed as a scary.
She's not a dinosaur. She's a dinosaur.
If you look at Doctor Who, since to go back to that, I'm ignoring that comment. If you look at Doctor Who as a whole, this series is not a horror series.
No, but they do have episodes that
are very
elements to them.
Yeah, exactly. There's a few episodes that are scary, that are, like anything dealing with the weeping angels, just I'm out. Right? Oh, but there's others that are lighthearted.
Jesus Christ. The side chat's saying, guys, if you watch this right now, we would be in violation of like 90 laws in the UK right now.
So Stabby also had an example of a good one for, historically written that would be sci-fi and horror. In 1826, Mary Shelley wrote a story called The Last Man about an earth ravaged by a plague. I have not read that, but I have been making it a point of going through some of the classics. So I've been reading some of Jules Verne. I've watched the TV adaptation.
It's a quick read too, JR. You'll get through it really fast. It's an enjoyable read. I just recently discovered that myself.
Some of the older stories, like Lovecraft, I've read it. I think the modern interpretations of his are horrifically scary. His writing is so dry, it's hard to read. If he didn't have famous friends, he wouldn't have been considered the good writer that he was. I think his ideas good, delivery not so much, even for his time. But yeah, there's that one. There's another one, if you want to talk historic, where the lady predicted, or I don't know if it's a lady author, the author predicted the sinking of the Titanic, wrote it almost exactly that way, like 100 years before the ship launched.
The wreck of the Titan. It was 20 years earlier.
20 years, there we go, not 100. But yeah, sometimes just knowing those coincidences can make it horrific, even if it wasn't intended to be so.
Well, I guess the main point is science fiction and horror are closely related. It's depending on how you write it, kind of where you want to focus the MacGuffin.
They're Alabama cousins.
Yeah, they're Eskimo kin, that's for sure.
Just
go ahead, Boncher.
I was going to say, when it comes to classic horror, I came up with this little story for free, and it was written in 1910. And that is one of the first resources that I came across when it came regarding writing Wendigo in fiction. But talking about, stuff written old. This was just written back in the day.
Thank you for saying Wendigo right. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Wendigo, yeah.
Who wrote that?
Algernon Blackwood. It is a public domain book. And it is one of those stories that you read it and you don't want to be out in the woods. Trust me. It is 90 pages long and truly creepy. But it will have you jumping at shadows out in the dark. You go outside, even in town, you're going to pray for the streetlights. Because it will, and it's not because it shows stuff that's graphic and terrifying. It just knows what is really scary.
Well, the idea of the Wendigo itself is scary.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And this is a 110-year-old idea of what the Wendigo was.
It's right up there with skinwalkers and the Appalachians and all the creepy shit.
See, I automatically get scared at the idea of streetlights just because in my house and growing up in the 80s, if you didn't make it home before the streetlights came on when you're out playing, it was basically a death sentence. So for me, like streetlights ultimately set the scene. So like those old noir movies where they're, under that one streetlight, like that already adds creep factor.
Trying to beat the streetlights home. Did you ever play that game?
Oh yeah, I lost it.
They wouldn't come on all at once. They would like sequentially come on. So
that's because of the light sensor. You were watching the Terminator literally go across the earth.
It can't. This is how I describe my mom in the 80s growing up. She can't be bargained with. She can't be reasoned with. She will absolutely not stop ever.
She feels no pity or remorse.
You sound like you just described my mother. Are you sure what my mother was? And luckily though, she didn't have like the thing where she grabbed the sandal and beat you with it. My mother wasn't that far gone.
Oh, the chancla?
The chancla, yeah. There's a video.
She was like
the last hurricane
of Tron throwing the disc with that thing.
Right. There's a video of some mom in Florida during the last hurricane taking the chancla at a literal alligator because it was coming onto her. Yeah, coming onto her dock, and she's like, "Oh no, we didn't."
The croc was like, "No, I don't want that smoke."
Yeah,
with the chancla. I've never heard of this thing. Oh,
it's a sandal.
The trope the Hispanic mother would take her sandal off and beat you with it if you got out of line. Or throw it at you, and it would like boomerang to hit you and then come back. It's reminiscent of the old Cosby line where he talked about his kids loving his mother, and he said, "That's not my mother. That's an old woman trying to earn her way into heaven."
Get into heaven now. Yeah. Or with you saying that, it reminds me of the Eddie Murphy joke about how she had mother radar. She'd be walking out for the night. She'd stop, take off one high heel, whip it, and it whack, and she'd put it back on her feet.
Yeah, or the jokes about the Stretch Armstrong when mom found out something. But we're kind of going far afield, and I did promise we would try to keep the episodes on time. We went a little far on nostalgia, so I think we're just going to bite the bullet, plan a few more nostalgia episodes where that's just the point.
Yeah,
but with that out of the way, Nick and I will brainstorm with Stabby that later. Obviously, sci-fi and horror is a deeper well than I thought. So we're probably going to have to narrow it down some for some topics because I do find it fascinating.
We're going to do a deep dive because, as Nathan put it so eloquently, we are Arkansas cousins.
And like the line between scary thing that you need for an action movie to have consequences, right? To set the ambiance for the stakes in any action style genre, where that line interplays with horror. I think that's an interesting thing to kind of look at. So with that out of the way, we're going to give our chance for our guests. Well, first, dear listener, if you have ideas, send it in the show note or in the comments, and we can focus based on that. This is also the part of the interview, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. It really does matter. And with that out of the way, Stabby, you look like you had something you wanted to say real quick before we let the author guests tell us about what they're working on and where they can be found.
Books and movies.
That's right.
Find the right books and movies.
Especially if you go into the indie movie space where they need all the help, just like indie creators writ large, be it comics, movies, whatever, even music, spreading the word, because the mainstream is not going to pimp the indie stuff. So if you find independent creators that you like of any genre or medium, share the wealth, right? And, who knows, you might make a best friend by introducing somebody to cool music. With that, Nathan, what are you writing at the moment?
Right now, I am working on. It is a medieval mecha story where I've created this fantasy world, and there is big walking 15-foot tall mechanized magical suits of armor that they use to defeat dragons and monsters and trolls and that type of stuff.
Absolutely. All right. And where can listeners and viewers find you?
NathanPedde.com.
Outstanding. All right. Jesse James Fain, outlaw author extraordinaire. What are you writing at the moment, and where can we find you?
I am wrapping up my second story for Rune Red Eagle. And if you're a horror fan, there's definitely going to be some overlap there. Rune is a combination of the Skinwalker and Berserker myths. He's half Muskogee and half Northman. And placed in a fun post-Civil War steampunk universe where both the Confederacy and the Union survive and have their own challenges. So there's a lot of horror-esque scenes in that. Wrapping up the second story on that one, hopefully I'll have edits, have it out. I'm hoping by the end of the year. And you can find me at outlawauthor.com. You can find me on Substack. You can find me on Facebook under my name. That is a personal page, so you're probably going to get a lot of tattoos and guns along with all my story updates. Then you can find me on Twitter at Jesse James Books or on Instagram at Jesse James Fain.
All right, and finally, Mr. MD Boncher. I had to do it at least once. MD, can you tell us what you're writing specifically at the moment?
Specifically, I just finished up my first draft for Pogue 1 by Raconteur Press, which is we got the deadline at the end of the month for that bad boy, and I had fun doing a story for the oft ignored or never heard of 88 Unicorn MOS, or Uniform, but they like to call themselves Unicorn. And I am now starting on my Plasma Pulp story for another one of their anthologies, which I am actually taking a step a bit farther back into pulp. I got an interesting idea that is taking me back to Gene Autry and the Radio Ranch with Phantom Empire style influences. Island at the Top of the World by Disney. So it's going to go really far back into the inspiration of pulp sci-fi. So here's how make it turn out.
88 Uniform is railway specialist. That I would not think of railroads and sci-fi together in a modern context.
It's what I attempted to get into the military on. I found out they had a railroad unit out of West Allis, Wisconsin, which was near where I lived at the time, and I couldn't pass MEPS. But yeah, that was one of the things I said. I had this idea hit and said, why not? And so railroad on a terraformed world in a war that hasn't happened yet, and I've been able to mine a lot of my knowledge as a foamer of railroad lore to kind of pack in and build this story.
So they have at Fort Eustis Army base in Virginia. They have the railway, they have the Transportation Museum. I've been there. You were required to go through there if you go to AIT there. And so years later, when the kids were born, I took them, and I have vivid memories of my oldest. He was like 4 when I took him through the first time, and he was really big into Thomas the Train. And he's standing in front of the railway section they had outside, and he's getting really mad because Thomas won't talk to him. And he's like yelling at this train because it's not answering him. If you ever are in Southern Virginia,
Thomas is a dick. I'm just saying.
Yeah, apparently.
I going into Roanoke and checking out the Railway Museum is on my list of things to do now that I moved down to the area. But I will say, looking at the pictures and stuff, compared to the National Railroad Museum in Green Bay, Wisconsin, it's a little weak sauce. with the exception of having the Norfolk and Western 611J class. That is still my favorite locomotive of all time. That thing is just a piece of beauty.
Yeah, and the cool thing is the Transportation Museum takes it all the way back from the covered wagon days through modern war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Although it was a little disconcerting the first time I went there and I saw people I knew on the walls. I'm like, I'm not old enough to be in a museum. They need to take these people down. Because I was with anyway. Another story for another day. So where can they find you on the wild interwebs?
On the interwebs, you can find me at resonantmedia.art. I also have a Substack by the name Resonant Point. You can also track me down there. If you must, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram under the name MD Boncher. So you can find me there. Otherwise, Amazon. I have music available as well on Bandcamp for those that are interested in the music that I write to score the Dream Nebula. So I have a small selection, about an album's worth on there right now. So those are where the places you can find me at the moment.
And as usual,
It's
all
really
of those.
weird because I have a story. This one time in Bandcamp, I took a flute and I put it in my
family-friendly show. Say what? All right, so, Nick, mute yourself before you like totally get us yanked off the airways.
Dude, I was muted. Then you started talking and you invoked my name. Now I got to talk more. Well,
I did not say it 3 times in front of a mirror, so I think we're good.
Dude, I'm not fucking Beetlejuice.
I was thinking about Bloody Mary, but Beetlejuice works.
Or Bloody Mary or Candyman, which you gotta say 5 times.
Hold on. Beetlejuice does not require you to be in front of a mirror, though.
Nope.
In all fairness, I hated the movie Apple Pie.
How
Never
could
seen
you?
it, won't watch it.
Like, how are we even friends?
I played the
Like
flute.
American Pie?
I played the flute.
Oh my god, I'm
Never seen it, won't watch it.
I dated a flute player, and it didn't go away. It did in that show. I'm just gonna play that out.
I also dated a flute player, and that happened. And she
All right, so we're going to try to save this as family friendly, and I'm going to say you can find us, dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters Podcast, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the bits, shoots, the rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Twitters. Twitter is where we mainly share our episodes and all the memes I shamelessly steal from everyone. Sometimes the memes are army friendly and maybe not family friendly, but I try to share those in the PM hour. So if you're looking at Twitter at 2 a.m, it's on you, people. And with that, we also link to our Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only. Keep the shenanigans over there to Madam Stabby Stab on her Instagram, Twitter, and the email. She's here for it. She will make you cry. She's actually nice on the podcast. She gets meaner if you tempt her. But, you know, we try to, like I said, she makes people cry. We have our website over there on Spotify. Trust me, gobbledygook. Don't hate me. Hate the Spotify the way they redid it. But if you go to the Linktree, click the Spotify, you go to our website, you can support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can keep the lights on. Or you can support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee until they float away on a river of Java. And if you go to our link in the show notes. Code Podcast Grunts. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. We shop local. Everybody wins. And with that, Stabby, what are you drinking from the coffee brand coffee right now?
It is called Maple Cream, spelt CREME. So it might be cream. I don't know.
So we are
it
filming
smells
this.
like and tastes like pancakes.
Nice. So we are filming this in November before Thanksgiving. I had an unexpected glasses expense for the boy child. So if they still have these in December, I am buying it. Ugh.
Pancakes.
It sounds delicious. It's on my list. I want to try. All right. And with that, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, nostalgia, and all things that go boom, shakalaka. And with that, thank you everyone for coming on. This was fun. We went a little far in the field, but that's just what we do here. And with that, I'm going to hit the end button. Don't cuss. Wait for